This episode is not suitable for young viewers. It contains paranormal and horror themes.
Hello, Trevor. Thank you for joining us on Beyond the Veil and for welcoming us into your home. It's a
Great pleasure.
Absolutely stunning.
Isn't it?
It's just
Yes.
gorgeous. You're a very lucky man to live here.
Thank you.
I thought we could start by just having you explain a little bit about your background and how you acquired the home. We'll begin with that. How about that?
Yeah, sure. Look, I'm Sydney born and bred, and I'm a clinician. And in my early days, I went to the Solomon Islands, where I was the clinician in charge of a hospital of an island of some 20,000 people, about 80 miles long, and toured around in a dugout canoe on an outboard, and had a pretty idyllic life. Only that I didn't get any pay, and worst of all, you can imagine, there was no booze apart from
the horror,
whole horrors, and a beer ration of a beer a day when I was there, having touring, United Church or Wesleyan villages where it was forbidden. So I learned about island life and the beauty of the people, also of their spirituality that would be almost forbidden against Orthodox religion.
How so?
Ancestral worship, signs that defied science. They could be at my house, which sounds idyllic. It was really a tin shed, but on a beach in the South Pacific, with water, literally a couple of meters away. So we're in a strait between the main island. So we were isolated actually on our own island where the hospital was. And I was some 20 meters from the hospital. So they would be sitting and talking to me, and a bird would fly into the house and they'd say, there's been a death in the family. And the next morning there'd be a death in the family. And this was from a distant village. So it wasn't as if they were aware of that. Now, you can't quantify that ever. And the church, Catholic church there, were pitifully out of place and certainly not in touch with the people. And they would have, not recognised that. That would have been heresy or devil worship. But I thought it was a beautiful thing. I've never been in sync with Orthodox religion in any form, even though I play organ, in churches. I don't do anything to offend if I can help it. But then again, I don't always agree with the dogma of it.
Sure.
But to have people that are so spiritually in touch, that we're also, daily mass goers. It was so beautiful for me.
And when your first experience with that, what was your initial reaction to hearing, like, if that was me, first of all, I imagine I'd be very intrigued. But at the same time, your logical brain kicks in and goes, what's going on here? Yeah, what was your reaction when you felt, when you heard?
Very interesting. Having known the people, because I was pretty close. I didn't have a close relationship with the church, the priests. Well, usually there was one and maximum two, and the nuns, who were very habited and very orthodox. In fact, at one point I cut all communication because of one, awful priest. And I just refused to have any dialogue with him, and I was kept on my end of the mission, and he was kept on his other. And I forbade him to go to the hospital because he was so crazy. in his views. I was interested, but they to know soundly, with good evidence that did happen.
Yeah.
There was something there, and I always and it was interesting because there was a nurse that had worked at the mission some 40 years before I did, from South Australia. I can't recall her name, and she'd be long, long, long dead. But I had, and I haven't told anyone this before, actually. It's interesting that you should mention it, going back to those days. I saw a picture of her in my mind, now, whether I was sleeping or not, but down to the beads. Now, I might have seen a photo of her, 20 or 30 years prior to that, a white nurse's outfit. But it bear no resemblance to that. She was an old lady, and she had beads on. And when I met her, that was exactly who I saw.
Oh.
And that was living there. Now, I don't think I would have had that experience because I was surrounded by people who kind of gave you permission to have those thoughts in some sort of way. And I wish I could remember her name, but she was there for a long time, and with a co-worker. And I can't remember whether they had a doctor or not, but they were so talented themselves that they were doing, very difficult deliveries and probably cesarean sections with obstructed labours as I was. So that was one memory that I had from it. And to think that I had this ability to be able to see somebody that I hadn't met, wasn't dead, but very much alive. And I had a vision, I suppose you'd ever call it that, of her before I met her. That's her.
That's
down
amazing.
To the beads. Yeah. Now, I haven't told anyone that before.
Thank you for sharing that with me.
That's exclusive. Because I hadn't the forum to talk to it.
Right.
Then, yeah. But when she mentioned the people and their experiences, and even down to the sisters, the nuns, they were very, very into ancestral worship.
Right.
Very frowned upon by the church. But they knew, and one of the sisters, who's long dead, the only Indigenous order in the country, was a healer, and she had herbs and procured those different all natural healing. But of course, with that comes the spirituality.
Sure.
And I can assure you, it wasn't Christian.
But it doesn't, because it's not Christian, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's evil.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah.
Well, that was the whole point.
Because she's a healer. Yeah.
The evil comes from people doing wrong to people.
Okay.
There was nothing wrong with those people having worship or belief of someone who's died, and that they're passing a message to them. And I'll give you an example. I treated the last flesh-eating person on this area in the Western Solomon Islands. His name was Old Man Oricano.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a number of malingerers in the hospital at the time. And I admitted Old Man Oricano to the hospital because he had a cancer from chewing betel nut with lime, which gives you a squamous cell carcinoma. People fled. They're up trees, and they were
because he was there,
and they were swimming across the channel. Yes, because they thought they were on the menu, because he was the last cannibal.
Right.
And I thought that was amazing. And I formed a bond with Old Man Oricano, and we talked in pidgin, in language. And he asked me to buy him a sulu, a wraparound, or lover, or a wraparound material put around his waist. And I did. I bought him that. And then I later learned that he converted to Christianity, from cannibalism. Now, I didn't encourage him to do that, I can assure you. but the actions of my ways he thought was far greater than whatever his belief was.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
You really made an impact on him.
Well, I did. And I mean, I would be the last person to convert to Christianity. Not that I don't, have a faith.
Do you think it's because he associates you being a white man with a white person?
And a Catholic mission, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I never had one word to him about a higher being.
Wow.
And he became a baptized Catholic, as far as I know. Long dead. We're talking nearly 40 years ago. So I'm ancient. It's good to have this opportunity to record this stuff, because I've never talked about my time, apart from you, Simone, in these places.
I'm just fascinated.
Yeah.
Like, who has these experiences?
Yes.
It's you're so blessed. I mean, I imagine it must have been difficult in certain ways. Excuse me. But
Have
sorry.
some water done.
I will. That's better. I imagine it must have been difficult. Total different change of scenery than what you would have been used to before you went there. But the experiences that you had there would have been life-changing.
Oh, look, they were. I mean, I was on a ship with a woman with an obstetric history that was on her way to 8 hours by sea to the nearest provincial hospital, who went into and had a shocking history of stillbirths and bleeds and all kinds of things. Who went into labour, and I was a shocking rough sea, terrible weather, and we'll diving and going from side to side, and there's probably a hole full of copra, so we were listing to one side and then another. It was terrifying. And she went into labour, and I was seasick. So I had hold of the kid and someone holding a bucket that I was throwing up in, and her sliding along the ground from the waves and things. And I remember that and thinking, oh, well, it's another delivery.
That one will go down in the history books.
Yeah. But I mean, those things were not a woman having a child was as natural as I'm just going to the garden and I'll come back with a kid, might be on a leash. I'll call it Spot. It's we that made a fuss of childbirth.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's been going on for how many years now?
Well, but I mean, this was a very primitive place. The women were bare-breasted. Their breasts were unassumedly uncovered. When I first went there, this is 1977. So that proves that I'm very old. And they were totally unaware of immodesty or anything. Their legs were their knees were covered, but their breasts were fully exposed. And it was a very free and different life.
Yeah.
There's nothing sexual about it.
Yeah.
It was just the way the women.
It's just the human body.
Yeah. So it's a great freedom on their part. And often when I'd go and take the photo, they'd cover it and think, oh, bugger, but I can't take it off.
Sure.
Yes, because that's also not correct. So there was a fine line about how you dealt with the beautiful people of that island. And it was also very hard because they were very, very primitive. We were so far away from the capital city, Honiara, and they were very, very staunched in custom medicine and witchcraft and ancestral worship. That they were very, very suspicious of my medicine.
Right.
So it took a lot to get them to comply.
Okay.
And you could tell the ones that did and the ones that didn't because of their outcomes.
Right.
But in the main, apart from one, which was fascinating, it was a woman who lived in the village, and I went over to see her. But I was there present for the delivery, and it was as if, they'd vinyl coated the birth canal. That kid just slid out, and it was due to a custom medicine they gave, which was probably some form of oxytocin. And I've never seen a delivery like it. And ever since, this child had the most textbook thing. She just sort of went, push. Oh,
I could have done with a couple of those deliveries. I had some shockers. I've had 4 kids,
not
always that straightforward.
This remote place. I mean, I would have loved to have bottled it, but I wouldn't have known the dose. I know that she was given a substance prior to it. I don't know what she gave or what the dose was. But some old bush midwife,
yeah, well, they know their stuff, don't they?
would have gathered this from the bush. But I've never seen a delivery like it. Never since. This woman just, they called me to say that she was, they sent a canoe across the passage, and I went over. No rush. Childbirth was not an emergency ever, or what it was when you had structured labour, because then you'd need to do a C-section.
Yeah.
And that was terrifying at first. Yeah, but in the end, it wasn't.
I have so many questions. I don't know where to start. So when you were delivering these children, and you have to, I guess, build rapport with the mother so that they trust you and they're not afraid.
And just a gender thing.
Well, yeah.
I was very young.
How did you overcome these barriers and show them that you were there to help and not to be had no intent of harm?
I had to prove myself. I had to prove myself in the sense that my medicine was good.
Okay.
Yeah. I had to have marks on my ruler, taps on the board. And to do that, I did it through the nurses. And we had to have good outcomes.
Right.
So when we had a kid who was very sick from a diarrheal disease or a serious infection, I had to come good.
Right.
I had to be able to rehydrate them. I had to be able to get that kid back. Kids are remarkable. They get sick very easy, very quickly. They get better very quickly, and they deteriorate very quickly and die. And there's a very fine line. And my role was to make sure that I didn't have deaths on my watch.
And so I suppose then word would spread quite quickly. And yeah, right.
This kid came in, and a kid would come in moribund. I mean, really lifeless, breathing, and obviously with a heartbeat, but limp and an altered level of consciousness. And you think, God knows what's going on. It'd usually be malaria, with high fever, and then dehydration. Dehydration was the major cause of kids being that ill, and terrifying presentations. It's just such small, beautiful creatures.
Yeah.
And then to have the responsibility and often on your own, to be able to get an intravenous access, to be able to rehydrate them and then to keep them well, and with primitive chemistry and all those things. So it took a toll, but you had to have a good outcome.
You sound incredibly talented. That I can imagine the challenges that you face there.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So tell me from there, how did that lead you to where we are today? What was the stepping stones and the path that you followed?
Well, obviously I came back to Sydney. I did more studies in intensive care mostly, and then renal medicine. And I did well with that. And I was living in the eastern suburbs. I was in the eastern suburbs not before I came out here. So I was living in Paddington, and then and I was also Consul General for the Solomon Islands. So it was a big workload.
Wow.
And I knew that I needed space I needed to be away from accessibility of the hospital.
Okay.
And also from the airport, so that people, ministers of the Crown and people I'd grown up with in Western Solomon Islands would just see it natural popping in to see me,
Right.
10
Yeah.
k's from the
Okay.
airport.
Okay.
We'll stay at Troops, and of course that wasn't always convenient.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I'll go out west, where no one will know me, and it's very hard to get to, and I just won't be available. A bugger for the hospital when you're on call, but a delight for people when you say, oh, well, if you can get a train, it's 45 minutes. And then, if there's a bus, if there's something, well, maybe you find the place.
I think it was a smart move for you to install those boundaries because, it's all take otherwise.
It was. So I then was at Bundina and thinking I'd like to live, because, unless you're going to travel half a day, like the Leyland brothers down through the national park by car, you've got to get to Cronulla and then get a 100-year-old boat across to Bundina. So I thought I was trying to make myself inaccessible.
Yeah.
In the nicest possible way. And so I thought Bundina would be very inaccessible, but so close to Sydney, even though it's hard through the national park, probably equally as hard on that 100-year-old boat that goes from Cronulla across. But I thought I'd do that. And then I went into a real estate agent and then found this house on a multi-list magazine. It was on the front page and it was selling for $320,000. And I thought, surely to God, they've left a naught of it, because I could afford that. So I got my Jewish banker and we ended up getting the place for 280.
What?
And because he needed out, he needed cash money, and he'd already bought something up Orange Way, and my ruthless financial advisor somehow beat him down, which was a bit naughty. But they had to sell, and this was on the market for a long time, apparently, and that was what you could pay for a bungalow here, less than a quarter of an acre block with an indifferent house on it.
What state of repair was the home in? Was it
it had repairs by Vivian Homes, and for the want of not being sued by Vivian Homes, I don't know that Vivian Homes did it, but whoever did it were the Dodgy brothers.
Okay.
The place was, I electrocuted myself on turning on a light here.
Okay.
So I had to pull out all the electrics, and some of them were the original. Whenever electric light went through here. So they'd done a patch-up job. And then there was, the issue of we didn't have glass in all the windows. We had some sort of carcinogenic sort of fibre thing that you'd some sort of substance that you make a surfboard out of.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And there were rats, not so much in the house. The people were very clean, casting no aspersions on them. But there was an infestation of mice and rats when I first moved in. And so I had my challenges. But I looked at the house a number of times. And when I was told that it was at Oakhurst, I was almost pulseless, being an eastern suburbs, not, because they said it was near Blacktown. And I thought, oh, Jesus. I mean, how can I live in Blacktown? Me. It's a terrible snob that I was. And I found the most beautiful people, of course, as you do in any area, since I've been here. Rob being one of them. People. You're either attracted to them or you attract them into your life, and I've had that joy since being here. So I bought this house, and was largely unencumbered for a number of years, and it was so affordable. It's worth a lot more than that now, I hope. And then I was here on my own initially, and that was confronting because I was consul general, and I was here in this house on my own. I had nobody else around me. For some way, my nearest neighbours, 150 metres that way, and the ones at the back, I didn't know. And I heard, my only experience here was footsteps coming up the stairs. Now, this wasn't imaginary or, asleep. This was footsteps, like someone coming up the stairs. And I was in my room, locked, with a speaker with an alarm on it, and a Juris alarm, which I had to get to the kitchen to get to. So I was thinking, any second now they're going to come through this door. That's the only experience I've had here. But these were footsteps, big footsteps.
Like heavy boots sort of thing?
Heavy boots, big, pronounced. You could tell when they got to the landing.
Yeah, right.
And turning and coming up to the door. And I was thinking, any second they're going to burst the door open. It was locked. So sitting up, pretty well scared. I don't know what's going to belt them with. And with Parkinson's, I'm not allowed to hold a shoot's license in case I take a car out or something. Trying to shoot somebody. I laugh about it because the day I went in to get my license, just to digress a bit, to get my to apply for my shooter's license, I hadn't taken my meds, I don't think, and my hands were like this. And she said, "Do you have a neurological disorder?" And I said, "What?" I didn't even know that I was shaking. So I had to come clean, and of course I'm banned from holding a gun.
Yeah, right.
But no, I didn't have a firearm in the house. I had this loud hailer thing with a big alarm on it, so I was going to belt him over the head with, but there was nothing there.
So did you hear them turn around and walk away, or just
the steps just dissipated?
All right.
It frightened the bejesus
I'll
out of
bet.
me. Yeah.
Especially when you're here on your own. Yeah.
And I'm so glad that the Juris alarm was, a couple of minutes away, because I would have, pressed it and brought all the emergency services here for nothing.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the other problem. So if it had been in my room, I would have activated.
Yeah, for sure.
But that stopped, and then I had people in the house, benevolent. There'd be some hard luck story, some displaced person, or someone that had been kicked out of some relationship, and it kind of followed what the Hannahs did. Jim Hanna and his wife, because they took in Irish immigrants, Catholic Irish immigrants in the 60s, and they were shockingly discriminated against, because of their Catholicism and just being Irish.
And so you've kind of followed suit unknowingly, I suppose, like by taking people in and wanting to help them.
Been good.
Yeah.
And that's why I think there's a good feeling about that.
Yeah, there is a very good feeling. It's so welcoming.
Yeah. And look at today. We've got a blind fellow here. We've got a female minister of the church who's brought him here. We've got a young woman, an Indian woman who she saved from no fixed abode, and now she's working with Fox Studios.
Oh wow!
We've got, and we're having a Indian baby shower,
celebration of life.
Yeah. Out in the grounds. So it's a place which just gives, and it makes other people happy.
Yeah. The good vibes are very strong here.
Yeah. And I think the Hannahs did that.
Yeah.
We had people, the Irish immigrants came back at one point, probably a decade or more ago, to come back just to see us. I would see the house and ask if they'd come in. And the matriarch of the family, the Irish mother, was visiting from Ireland. She just wanted to see the place. And their sons all live here. And it was a beautiful thing.
And I imagine she would have had very fond memories of being here.
Yeah.
Did she share her stories with you?
Not a lot. I know they put in an avocado green bathroom, which was just frightful. Yeah, that had to go.
Yeah, some of the stories that we've got from our other guests are just incredible. Like you wouldn't read about it. Very interesting. So
I'm not sure that I'm going to be the best interview for psychic encounters, but overall, it's been an incredibly interesting life with things that I don't understand.
Yeah, for sure. I know. So the way I found out about you was from Rob from Sydney Paranormal League, and he speaks so highly of you.
Oh, heavens.
And he says he just can't spend enough time here. You know, like he always wants to come back because there's always something new happening, and there's many people that have done paranormal investigations here all comment about so many things have happened repetitively, people's names being spoken. So, and like with different people that come through every time, living people that come through every time, reporting the same things over and over. I can't wait to come with the team and do an investigation here myself. I would absolutely love to. But the things that they tell me about the place and how active it can be, what really interested me was how if you're not here, everything dies down.
Yeah, I can't explain that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I wonder if it's because the spirits who reside here have an attachment to you. They trust you, like the way you've built trust with the people of the Solomon Islands. You've built trust with the people of the house.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's having done that, when you leave, they feel like, well, as a respect thing, if he's not home, then neither are we, sort of thing. You know, you're not entering someone else's house when they're not home out of respect.
And I don't feel it. I mean, I don't feel like they're attached to me or they're following me. Although I must say that when I'm here on my own, I do feel there's someone behind me, and I never visualize anything. But there is something that I feel someone is following, or looking after me, or looking over me, or something. I often, almost say, "Excuse me," as I'm, turning around in the kitchen. Or
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I've not witnessed. I don't have those skills, that gift to be able to see, apart from that vision of the former nurse.
Yeah, right.
I could have. I knew exactly what she was wearing, and that's the only.
That's
experience.
remarkable.
Yeah, and then having met her was exactly who I knew she would be, and I did see a photograph of her. It was 30 years prior to that, and she looked nothing like it, because I didn't look anything like me 30 years prior to this. Yeah,
just wow.
But it's funny, because we had last Sunday. I had two musicians here, both from Poland. One a pretty well-known soprano, and her mother. Now, her mother is an orchestra leader. Was an orchestra leader. As a violinist, first violinist, in things like Miss Saigon, working with the great playwright and composer that wrote Cats and all of those magnificent things, Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber. And she would be the orchestra leader for all of those things. And, was really at the top of her field as a musician. And her daughter, a beautiful voice. She has rung me 3 times and sent messages saying she has been affected by her luncheon here a Sunday 1 week ago at this house.
Affected how?
in some way uplifted to a place where she just never thought it was possible.
Wow.
Mm.
And what took place on the day? Anything out of the ordinary?
A luncheon. They didn't drink, or they might have had a glass of wine. I would have matched them, 4 times that. I played organ while the daughter sang. The mother, we walked around the grounds. We picked mulberries together for dessert. And just were present in this place, and she just can't believe the attraction that she has.
Trevor, I think it's you.
Oh, please.
No, honestly,
Yeah.
I think it's you're so caring and so down to earth, and you just make people feel very valued. I honestly think it's you.
They are, darling. They are. We've got out here today. We've got Hindu and Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Indian and Iraq and Lebanon and all of the places of conflict you can imagine.
And yet they all come together here.
They all come together.
Yeah.
We've got people diametrically opposed in their views towards each other. We've got people wearing hijabs and those not. We've got all of them beautifully together and being accepted and loved.
What a magical place.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
And they bring to this place a great sense of.
Do you find your I know you do like a bed and breakfast here.
Oh, I used to. Oh God, let me have a plug for Airbnb. The pack of shit. And that's the worst I'll say whilst on camera. They are awful people. They are. Yeah, they put in an accusation that I had sexually been inappropriate to a woman guest here.
Wait, hold on. Airbnb or the guest?
Airbnb. No, we don't know. It was all under anonymity. Didn't say who the guest was, when they stayed, and I was taken off their listing. So don't go with Airbnb.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
No,
sorry,
no sense of reply.
I didn't mean to to bring that up at all. I had no idea. What I was getting at was the people that come
people that come.
Yeah.
Repeat business. People that say you're not on the listing anymore. There's people coming next week that are coming back because of it.
Yeah.
Oh, the friends I've met. The people that have said this is the most rewarding stay they've had anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's a truism. How the hell they got this one? This was, I think, set up because there's a sensitive issue going on in the courts, and I've got a feeling that this was a setup. But me inappropriately addressing any person is just not possible.
I could tell that from you right away that it's just not.
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
The dignity of the person is paramount, and that's been tested recently again. But that's something that's an awful part of Australian society, and that's tall poppy stuff.
Disgusting is what it is.
Syndrome. I mean, to be amongst this community in 2024 and be a knight, is something which people, I think, have problems digesting. They are jealous. I don't have both. I'd be the poorest or the most not encumbered, knight in the history of knighthood. People either get it for industry or for bringing wealth to a particular field of their profession. They don't often get it for philanthropy works.
Yeah, right.
Really, they don't. They're always captains of industry, or they're very, very important, and they're there on your lips. I'm not any of those things, and it's easy, very easy. When I had a terrible legal battle, they had my dear friend Marcus Einfeld, Justice Marcus Einfeld, imprisoned, and Marcus and I worked on the Royal Commission of Inquiry on the request of the Attorney General, Solomon Islands, me as their consul, which never happened. He came back and he was imprisoned for a $20 parking infringement. And then, he, of course, being a judge of a high court, of a higher court, Supreme Court, and, so then there was Cardinal Pell, who, whatever you think of Cardinal Pell, he certainly wasn't a pedophile, and he was in prison, and now they had a knight, so they had the trifecta.
What's the benefit of that?
People putting down people. The church is no saint, let me tell you, in dealing with social justice and injustice to those people that were violated. Those women and men that have suffered under the church.
Yeah.
To get Cardinal Pell was to pay the church back. Why don't we hit the top? Why go for a priest, a pedophile, when we can go to the head of the church in Australia?
Okay, well, as wrong as it is, I get the logic behind that, but why drag a knight into that?
A knight is easy pickings, because I don't have influence. I'm not in a position.
But you have a title, so they think, right? Yes. Okay, I see.
But I've just been to NCAT, the civil tribunal, over this very issue. He'll deliberate after. I hope this is a podcast or produced. But the injustice towards me has been incredible.
I honestly can't believe anyone would want to do harm to you.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to do the book or the musical, but it'll be interesting. I lead a very full life, and I have a great many friends, and I've enjoyed many experiences.
And you've got to focus on that rather than, the negativity that surrounds what has happened.
Do. And I see the beauty in all that happens here today. And you, Simone, for coming out of your way to interview me, and Rob, who's an endearing friend, out of nowhere, we've become good mates.
Do you know much about what other teams have happened here?
No. Only Craig was in Craig from his group. He was in an altered state of consciousness, and as he was frozen with whatever had happened to him, and I couldn't. He had a lower pulse rate. He was in a very altered state.
All right, all right.
But he's the one with the beautiful wife.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's on our podcast too.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
What a lovely couple they are.
Aren't they? It's funny. I know Craig not through Nikki, his wife. I met him several years ago. Oh, she's stunning. And then I met her, and I didn't put the two together. Then I saw an interview that Craig had done on another podcast, and I went, I know him. I used to work with this guy. And Rob's like, yeah, that's Nikki's husband. And my mind's gone. Going back to the paranormal side of things that have gone on here, I know a number of teams have come through and they do their investigations and then they move on. Is there anyone that stands out to you that's had an interesting encounter?
Look, there have been a number that have come through. I couldn't say, because my knowledge of paranormal is poor.
Okay.
And I couldn't say whether they were legitimate or whether
Sure.
they were, self-serving. I can certainly say that there were people that seemed to be well organised and more credible than others. But one particular one who was incredibly professional and very in touch with his own culture, not being Australian, and I related a lot to him because I had that great benefit of growing up in formative years in the Solomon Islands as a young medico. And this fellow had an experience here where he was lying outside. We've got church pews on the veranda there, and he was lying outside on his side in a completely transfixed, altered state. He had a lower pulse rate, a more feeble pulse rate, because I was worried about him clinically. Yeah. He wasn't rousable. His lovely wife was present, and she assured me that everything was all right.
Was he conscious, or
no,
right?
He wasn't conscious.
Yeah, okay.
No, he had an altered state of consciousness, and something in this house had affected him.
Wow. How long was he in this state for?
Maybe half an hour. I was worried about, his physical state, but this did happen.
We're down to the last two questions. I'll save the best ones for last.
Thank you.
First one is, I've heard on the grapevine that there was once was it a priest that was here who had an experience of his own?
That's right. Isn't that interesting? Because I never followed it up. I don't know whether I had, got excited about his coming and maybe had a pre-luncheon drink, or whether I just let it go. But he was going to be seated in the table that's the dining area, which is in this grand room. And he said to me, "Who's that little girl that just touched the back of my leg?"
And what was your response?
I said, "There is no little girl here."
How did he react?
Oh, nothing was said about it.
And that was it?
And nothing has been said since. I didn't ask him at the time why he said it or what prompted him to say it. But I intend to.
Yeah.
And this was at a time, because luncheons here at the House of Trev can get a little generous with the alcohol. Long lunches, on the very occasional day. They can go on for some time. And this was prior to lunch. So I had probably had the anticipatory, glass of wine, midday, mandatory, most parts of the world, including this house. And
mine too.
Yes. And then would have waited for him. He probably would have arrived and ready to have his first glass of wine, having driven here. And then, so neither of us were pissed in the vernacular. And for him to have said, a fairly orthodox priest, very straight down the line in his beliefs and his teachings and his representation of the church, and a good man, I've never questioned him about it, but I certainly intend to.
Yeah. Oh, you have to let me know what he said.
I did report it to Rob and said, this was most odd. I mean, firstly, what made him thought it was a little girl if he didn't see something?
Yep.
But it's as plain as day that he made that comment. And, I still to this day don't know why I didn't take him up on it.
Have any of your other guests that have been staying here experienced anything?
Yeah, they have. Particularly in the room just down the staircase and immediately to the right. Because that's allegedly where a little girl died.
Oh, so people have died here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Many?
Well, I know of one, and I'm told that there are others.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So there's more than one grave on the property,
Okay.
which we haven't been able to identify. And to identify it is to reverence.
So it's an unmarked grave, is it?
Unmarked.
Oh, right. Mm. So what sort of things have your guests experienced then?
I mean, as a diplomat before, I would have the Consul General of Japan here and say, who's that little girl belong to over there? Because diplomatic functions, you don't have kids.
Yeah.
And I say, there's no little girl here. So, I mean, other people...
So they're making themselves known.
Yeah, to people that aren't gifted to be able to cite these things. The priest would be the last person in the world.
Sure.
A Catholic priest.
They're having fun with this. They really are.
Yeah.
Spirit has such a sense of humour.
Yeah.
And it's
But why didn't I take it further at the time? Why didn't I say, how did you know it was a girl? I didn't ask any questions.
Maybe there was a distraction.
Could have been.
Maybe the wine was just too good and you needed to pour another.
Yeah, well,
likely
I know
scenario.
for a fact that I wasn't inebriated.
No.
I mean, whilst I do enjoy a drink, I don't normally start, before midday. And obviously if I'm working, not before evening.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It would, we were considering getting a skeptic on the show. Maybe this would be, if you wouldn't mind,
I don't mind, yeah.
Would be an interesting place to interview them, because perhaps the spirits that reside here would get a bit pranky with them and show themselves.
Well, I mean, I would have considered myself a skeptic too, had I not had that spiritual connection in the Solomon Islands.
Yeah, right.
It's very easy to dismiss something outright because it doesn't fit into a box in science or in the way that you think. But stranger things have happened in medicine. People choose to die when they want to die. People wake up from grade 4 comas when someone walks in the room that they haven't seen a loved one. And we can't explain that.
And so many people that are dying will hold off until a
loved one comes. Or a loved one leaves. Not to distress them too much. We don't. There's so many things and so many visits of their loved ones after they die.
Working in the medical field, did you? I mean, I imagine you would have experienced many people passing away.
Many deaths.
Did you have any odd encounters in the Solomons with that?
Mercifully, I didn't have any deaths in the hospital. If anyone looked like they're going to die, as I think all people should do, is to go to the people. The greatest thing that you can give a person who's dying is love.
Sure.
And you can't administer that in a
clinical field
environment.
Yeah. Okay.
So whilst I knew that people were going to die, I couldn't. But I've been to places in Solomons where they told me that children were fed to crocodiles and things in the past, and there were places that you couldn't get out of quickly enough. I've been to places where I felt so uneasy. One is there's a small village up from Sofala, which is very popular and run by Parks Wildlife Services. Very famous with artists. It's got a pub there, and I can't for the life of me think of the name of it. But I did a tour of the hospital there, and I couldn't get out of the hospital quick enough.
Right.
Just places where death has occurred, or places where death has occurred untoward, or where people have suffered.
Yeah. It's the suffering that lingers, I think. Yeah.
And they're things that affect me.
Yeah, me too, very much.
Yeah. So they're the sorts of things. The hospital that I ran had a good feeling about it. I mean, it had weird things happen there. Weird things in the sense of not being able to control the environment. You go in and do a sterile procedure and a rat run across a woman's abdomen. What's the point? But you tried. And you thought the place was clean and vermin-free and all that sort of stuff. But, and I'm scared of rats, by the way, too. I'll be up in the chair. Yeah. I didn't initially, but I had a very bad rat experience, which is another story, which has got nothing to do with this. But equally fearful.
Maybe later over dinner.
Indeed. Tonight, I hope. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Very interesting. Thank you. I think that's...
Well, so it's been my pleasure. My pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you.
To meet you.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been an experience, I tell you. Very, very interesting. Really appreciate you speaking with us.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. And all power to Rob for organising it. And thank you, Rob, for your ongoing support of the house. It's heartfelt, and you're very much loved by everyone here.
Well, until next time, I'm going to bid you all adieu. And
hopefully we'll see you in an hour or so.
Yeah. Stay spooky.
Thank you. Thank you.